Welcome back to Mindset Rebuild, everybody. I'm Alan, and as always, Rebecca's here with me.
Ready to dive deep.
Ready to go deep to help you become the calm, visionary CEO of your life. So if you're new to the show, and this is your first deep dive with us,
Welcome.
we take the best content we can find out there and break it down into really actionable steps for you guys.
And today we are unpacking a fascinating piece by Intrinsic coach Warren.
Right.
He's basically saying mindset is the new biotech and drawing some pretty wild parallels between gene editing and the power of our thoughts.
Yeah, when I first saw the title, I was like, mindset is biotech. I was a little skeptical. But once I dug into it, I got to say I was captivated by some of the connections that he's making.
Yeah.
Especially this idea that we can actually edit our beliefs, like almost like we're rewriting our own DNA, but it's our mental DNA.
That's really the core of his argument. And I think what makes it so compelling is he's not just talking about positive thinking. He's grounding it in this really powerful metaphor of biotech, specifically CRISPR, which, has just revolutionized gene editing.
All right, CRISPR. So for anyone who doesn't know, CRISPR is this incredible tool that allows scientists to go in and make really precise changes to DNA sequences.
Exactly.
And he's basically saying we can apply that same level of precision to our own minds.
It's a bold claim for sure.
It is bold, yeah.
But I think it's rooted in a deep understanding of neuroplasticity.
Right.
Which is that amazing capacity that our brains have to change and adapt throughout our lives.
Right.
We are not stuck with the mental wiring we were born with. We can actually rewire ourselves.
Okay. So we can change, but what does that actually look like in practice? It's not like we can just open up our brains and start snipping away at neurons, right?
No, not literally.
Right.
But that's where I think Warren's mental CRISPR method comes in. He lays out this 3-step process for identifying and editing those limiting beliefs that are holding us back.
Okay, so let's break that down for our listeners because I think this could be huge. Where do we even start with this mental editing?
The first step is what he calls identifying the mental mutation.
Okay.
So, that pesky thought pattern that keeps cropping up, that keeps sabotaging your efforts. It could be, I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed, or even, I'm just not creative.
The familiar voices of self-doubt.
Exactly.
They're definitely the soundtrack to many a creator's journey.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah, everyone experiences that at some point.
Totally.
So once we've identified that mental mutation, like what's next? How do we actually edit it?
Step 2 is to cut it out.
Okay.
This is about getting to the root of the problem. What are the triggers that reinforce that negative belief? Are there certain environments, people, or even habits that are feeding that mental mutation? That makes so much sense. It's like if we want to rewrite our mental code, we need to eliminate the things that keep triggering the old, unhelpful code. It's like debugging a program.
Exactly.
Right?
It's about becoming aware of those patterns and then taking conscious steps to interrupt them. So this might mean setting boundaries with certain people, creating a more supportive work environment, or even just like changing your daily routine.
It's about taking control of your inputs,
Right.
Because I think what we feed our minds shapes our reality. So we need to be really intentional about the information, the experiences, even the self-talk that we allow into our mental ecosystem.
100%. And that brings us to the final step in the mental CRISPR method, which is replacing the old code with a new upgraded belief.
Right. So instead of I'm not good enough, we start telling ourselves I am capable and deserving, or I'm learning and growing every day. But how do we actually make sure those new beliefs stick? Is it just a matter of positive thinking, or is there something more to it? It goes deeper than that. It's about, remember, neuroplasticity. So every time we repeat a thought, we strengthen the neural pathways associated with that thought. It's like building a mental muscle.
Okay.
So the more we consciously choose to focus on those empowering beliefs, the stronger those pathways become, and the more natural those thoughts start to feel over time.
So it's a combination of awareness, intention, and repetition.
Right.
We're not just passively hoping for a better mindset. We're actively training our brains to think differently.
Exactly.
That's cool. I'm already starting to see how this could be a game changer, especially for creators and entrepreneurs who are out there facing self-doubt and uncertainty all the time.
Absolutely.
But before we dive into some specific examples and practical tips, I want to touch on the science behind all of this, because it can't just be a new age feel-good theory, right? There has to be actual research to support this idea that we can rewire our brains.
Absolutely, and there's a whole field of neuroscience dedicated to studying neuroplasticity. And there's a growing body of evidence showing that our thoughts can actually change the structure and function of our brains. For example, studies have shown that practicing mindfulness meditation can actually increase the density of gray matter in areas of the brain that are associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness.
Wow. So we're not just talking about like feeling better. We're talking about actual physical changes in the brain.
That's right.
That's pretty remarkable.
It is.
And it really does underscore the power we have to shape our own minds, right?
Absolutely.
We're not just at the mercy of our genes or our past experiences. We really do have this ability to consciously evolve our brains and create those new neural pathways that support, our goals and our well-being. So we've got the foundation here. Neuroplasticity makes change possible. But I think the real genius of this mental CRISPR approach is that it gives us that practical framework, that step-by-step process for actually making those changes.
I agree. And I think that's what makes it so relevant for our listeners because as creators and entrepreneurs, we're constantly pushing boundaries. We're taking risks. We're putting ourselves out there, and it's challenging.
It's inherently challenging.
And so if we're running on outdated mental software,
Right.
That's full of self-doubt and limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
it's going to be so much harder to achieve our goals.
That makes perfect sense. So how can our listeners start applying this mental CRISPR method to their own lives? What are some concrete examples of how this would work in the real world? Let's dig into that in part 2.
Yeah, let's do it. Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about rewiring our brains and, actually editing our thoughts. And all the research is pretty compelling.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm thinking about all of our listeners out there who are probably juggling, a million things right now, building their businesses, creating content, managing clients. How can this mental CRISPR method really help them deal with some of the very specific challenges that come with being a creator or entrepreneur?
That's such a good question, and I think it all comes down to targeting the right mutations. So let's take imposter syndrome, for example.
Okay.
That feeling of not being good enough or that you're going to be found out, that can be a major roadblock for creators.
Yeah, it's almost like a universal experience, right?
Oh, yeah.
That fear that we're somehow faking it till we make it.
Totally.
And then any minute now, everyone's going to realize we have no idea what we're doing.
Exactly. And it often stems from that belief that we need to be perfect or that we need to have all the answers or that we can't show any vulnerability.
Right.
So using the mental CRISPR method, the first step would be to simply acknowledge that thought pattern. Okay. There's that imposter syndrome voice again.
Got it. So becoming aware of it rather than trying to push it away.
Exactly. Awareness is key. And then from there, we can start to identify the triggers.
Right.
What situations or thoughts tend to activate that imposter syndrome? Maybe it's comparing yourself to others on social media, or maybe it's receiving critical feedback.
And once you've kind of identified those triggers, then you can start to cut it out. Right? Maybe that means limiting your social media consumption.
Exactly.
Or reframing how you receive feedback.
Right. It's about taking control of your environment and your inputs. And then that crucial step is replacing that I'm not good enough belief with something more empowering.
Yeah, like I am capable and qualified.
Yes.
My unique skills and perspective have value.
Exactly. And the more you consciously repeat that new belief, the more you act in alignment with it.
Right.
The stronger that neural pathway becomes.
So we're literally rewiring our brains to see ourselves and our abilities differently.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
What about fear of failure?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's another big one that plagues a lot of creators and entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. I think fear of failure often comes from a belief that mistakes are catastrophic, that they define our worth. So again, we can use the mental CRISPR method to address this. The first step is to acknowledge the fear. So, for example, I'm feeling scared of launching this product because I'm afraid it will fail.
Right.
Then get curious about where that fear is coming from. Is it a past experience? Is it a fear of disappointing others? Is it a fear of financial ruin?
Right. So pinpoint the root of it.
Exactly. And then we can move to cutting it out. So if the fear is rooted in a past experience, maybe you can reframe that experience as a valuable lesson learned.
Okay.
If it's a fear of disappointing others, perhaps you can work on setting healthy boundaries and releasing the need for external validation.
Right.
And then, of course, we replace that fear-based thought with something more empowering.
Like I'm willing to take calculated risks, and I know that even if things don't go as planned, I can learn and grow from the experience.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective from failure being a threat to failure being a stepping stone. a
Right.
necessary part of the growth process.
I love that because it's not about pretending that fear doesn't exist
Right.
or that failure won't happen.
Exactly.
It's about choosing how we respond to these inevitable experiences.
Mm.
We're essentially hacking our own operating systems to be more resilient and adaptable.
I love that analogy. Yeah. We're upgrading our mental software to better handle the challenges and uncertainties of the entrepreneurial journey.
So we've talked about imposter syndrome, fear of failure.
Yeah.
What about overwhelm? I feel like that's another one that so many creators struggle with. It's like a constant thing.
It is. Overwhelm often comes from a belief that we have to do everything ourselves, that we need to be in control of every single detail, that
Yeah.
we need to be constantly on.
And I think that's especially true for creators and entrepreneurs because we tend to be very passionate, driven people.
Yeah.
And it's easy to just blur the lines between work and life, which leads to burnout.
Absolutely. And so using the mental CRISPR method, we can start to challenge those beliefs that are contributing to the overwhelm. First, acknowledge it. I'm feeling overwhelmed because I'm trying to do too many things at once. Then try to pinpoint the sources. Is it a lack of boundaries? Is it taking on too many projects? Is it not delegating effectively?
Right. All of the above, maybe.
Right, maybe. And once you've identified the sources, you can start to cut them out. Maybe that means setting clearer boundaries around your work hours, or learning to say no more often, or building a team to support you.
And then replacing those limiting beliefs with, again, more empowering ones.
Exactly. So instead of I have to do everything myself, you might shift to I trust myself to delegate effectively and build a supportive team. Or instead of I need to be constantly on, you might adopt the belief I prioritize rest and recharge so I can show up fully energized and focused.
It's like we're giving ourselves permission to work smarter, not harder,
Yes.
to prioritize our well-being and create a more sustainable way of working.
And I think that's such an important message for creators and entrepreneurs, especially in today's world where it's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and grind.
This whole mental CRISPR method is really resonating with me. It's giving me a whole new perspective on how I can approach my own mental blocks and challenges.
I'm glad to hear that.
But beyond these specific examples, I'm curious to explore how this approach can help us become those calm, visionary CEOs of our lives that we talk so much about on Mindset Rebuild.
That's a perfect segue to the next part of our deep dive, where we'll look at how the mental CRISPR method can help us not only overcome challenges, but also unlock our full potential and create truly fulfilling lives.
Welcome back to the show. You know, we talk a lot on Mindset Rebuild about becoming the calm, visionary CEOs of our lives. And it seems like this mental CRISPR method really aligns with that vision.
It really does. I mean, think about what a CEO does, right? They set a clear vision, they make those strategic decisions, they lead their team toward success, they don't get bogged down in every little detail or let setbacks, completely derail them. They have a certain level of mental clarity and resilience.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this method is helping us cultivate, right? We're
Sure.
essentially taking charge of our mental boardroom,
Yeah.
identifying those unproductive thought patterns, and then replacing them with the ones that actually support our vision.
Exactly. Imagine if you could walk into any situation with this deep sense of inner confidence, knowing that you have the mental tools to handle whatever comes your way. That's the power of having a really strong, adaptable mindset.
Yeah, it's like we're upgrading from a clunky, outdated operating system to this sleek, powerful one that can handle anything we throw at it.
I love that.
But it's more than just problem solving, right? It's about creating a life that truly aligns with our values and aspirations.
Absolutely. This isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about unlocking our full potential. I mean, imagine if you could identify those limiting beliefs that have been holding you back from pursuing your biggest dreams. What if you could rewrite those beliefs and step boldly into a future where anything feels possible?
That's so inspiring. It's like we're taking control of our own evolution, not just adapting to our circumstances, but actually shaping them to reflect who we want to become.
And that's what I find so exciting about this whole concept of mindset as biotech. It's about recognizing that we have this incredible power to influence our own minds, to shape our own realities. It's empowering, to say the least.
It really is. It's like we're given the keys to the control room of our own lives.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's that one key message you want to leave our listeners with?
If you could edit just one belief today, what would it be? That nagging thought that's been holding you back, whispering you're not enough or you'll never succeed. What if you could replace it with something bold, something empowering, something that truly aligns with the vision you have for your life?
Yeah. What if we could all step into that power? into that possibility. I think that's the challenge we're leaving you with today. What one belief will you edit? And what incredible things might become possible in your life when you do? Keep exploring these ideas. Keep experimenting. Keep rewiring your mindset for success. You can find us at mindsetrebuild.substack.com for more deep dives and resources to support you on your journey. Thanks for joining us.